soldier has a story, a life like Noah, that burns apart for me and you under the red wine. Lay me down, lay me down, pour me down, draped in the red, white, and blue. From the trenches of war, across the Rhine, Normandy beaches upon Boulevard, with the cold Korean War, they have long forgotten that a hot Saigon was patties of Vietnam. She was raised to hear a shoe on the beaches of those high seas. She flew at Pearl and Midway, wings that flew the sky. On the ships of those high seas, to the mountains of Afghanistan, the desert of Iraq and Black Hawk Down, under the red, white, and blue. Lay me down, lay me down, pour me down, draped in the red, white, and blue. When they play those taps, shoot those guns, shoot the 21. I'll go down, draped in the red, white, and blue. Lay me down, lay me down, pour me down, draped in the red, white, and blue. Lay me down, lay me down, pour me down, draped in the red, white, and blue. Thank you. For all the hard work, all the stuff, we thank you. I mean, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me right now. All the brothers getting together and you leading it. So thank you. I am the infantry. I am my country's strength in war, for deterrent in peace. I am the heart of the fight, wherever, whenever. I carry America's faith and honor against her enemies. I am the queen of battle. I am what my country expects of me, best trained soldier in the world in the race for victory. I am swift, determined, I am swift, determined, and courageous, armed with the fierceness to win. Never will I fail my country's trust, always will I fight. Throughout the foe to the objective to triumph over all. If necessary, I will fight to my death. By my steadfast courage, I have won 200 years of freedom. I yield not to weakness, to hunger, to cowardice, to fatigue, to superior odds. For I am mentally tough, physically strong, and morally straight. I forsake not my country, my mission, my comrades, my sacred duty. I am relentless, I am always there, now and forever. I am the infantry, follow me. I do want to say that a few months ago, I seen this drawing on the back of a Vietnam shirt. And it had I am not a hero, but I did have the honor of walking alongside a few. And this is what I feel about all you guys, and I want to thank you.
Whereas Scott Guptill and Tony Dooley served as graduates of the NCOC program and served as non-commissioned officers in the Vietnam War. And whereas Scott Guptill and Tony Dooley have organized reunions at the Fort Benning installation no less than 4 times since the end of the Vietnam War. And whereas on this 50th anniversary, since the inception of the NCOC program, graduates salute Scott Guptill and Tony Dooley for their untiring efforts to bring together fellow NCOs who served their country. And whereas we salute those who did not return, and we salute their families. Now therefore, the Honorable Mayor of Columbus, Georgia, Teresa Pike Tomlinson, does proclaim October the 3rd, 2017 as NCOC 50th Anniversary Reunion Scott Guptill and Tony Dooley Day officially in the city of Columbus, Georgia. And to whom may I present Well, we're going to turn it around. Now, what it is that they have one, but I'm going to give you the number to the mayor's administrative assistant. Her name is Alexis, for you to have one, because each of you need to have one. So if we can just turn around. They want to see you. They don't want to see me. Stand there, please.
Fraternity until I joined this one. We got the greatest fraternity in the world. I'm honored to be a part of it. We got the greatest fraternity in the world. Yeah. So I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker. But before that, I asked Scott if I could impose on your time and your attention just for a few minutes to do something before I introduce General Hughes. A couple years ago, the Secretary of Defense, another NCO, though he didn't have the training we did, by the name of Chuck Hagel, called and asked if I would chair the Vietnam War Commemoration Advisory Committee. It was a committee established by a piece of legislation, Defense Reauthorization Act, I think in 08 or 09. And the purpose was over a period of time, let me give you the long, you get the Cliff Notes version, was to elevate the public visibility not of the war necessarily, but of the warriors during the Vietnam era, to thank and to honor the men and women who served during that time. You and a couple million others, and their families. So to cut to the chase, we've established about 10,000 partnerships. We've had 10,000 ceremonies, some large and small. And what we do at these ceremonies, and I told the general that was in charge of it, and I asked Scott if it was all right we do it here. Part of the commemoration is a very special pin that identifies all of us as a group of men and women who served during that time, and a copy of the executive order that talks about the purpose of the advisory committee and why today, 40, 50 years after, we want to recognize our collective service. And so I asked Scott if it would be all right if we called all the fraternity boys here. By the way, it is getting late, and when they were young and they could have belonged to a fraternity, they could have stayed up all night. I'm not sure anybody can stay up all night anymore in this fraternity. But what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is I'd like you all to come forward. Maybe, I know you don't feel like standing in line, but I'd like General Hughes to personally give you one of these pins that I wear proudly, not just on Veterans Day, but put it on my lapel wherever I go. It just simply says, thank you to you, and thank your families that endured your service. So before I introduce General Hughes, if you don't mind, it is my great privilege to present to you on behalf of the Vietnam War Commemoration Committee, comprised of a lot of Vietnam vets from the branches of the service. The number 2 man is Paul Buca, whose picture's over there. He's a Medal of Honor winner. We got Chuck Hagel, a platoon leader on it. Ann Mills Griffiths from POWMA fame and others. We are part of the advisory committee. The coin is our way to say to each and every one of you, we honor you and we thank you for your service. So I'd like you to come up and get the pin from the general if you don't mind. There you go. I knew you'd come back. I knew you'd help me.
Come on through.
Yeah. We're trying to get them for next year's reviews or 2 years from reviews.
This is kind of our honor. Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You're going to get one of these bids? I don't know. I wasn't there.
I know you were.
That's okay.
Oh, no, thank you.
That's I'm going to send these from Chenecum.
Thank you very much. Be with you.
General, Light Infantry. We won't hold that against you. I heard that, Scotty. Sorry.
Yeah, 2 tours there. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Thank you, sir, for all what you've done.
Well done, yes, sir.
Tom, thank you.
You're welcome. Sarge. Welcome, Sarge. Sarge.
They work for a living.
I know.
Yes, sir.
My mother and father raised me different. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Told that sergeant over on the base today that too. That sergeant.
I'm sorry.
Watch there's a podium right behind you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
You can shake it.
How are you?
I live 4 hours from Boulder all the way up to the 25th.
Yeah, well, I go down at night from time, and Washington's the most beautiful place at night when you walk by the morning.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Be with
I'll
you.
do that
Thank
so
you.
for a while and then come back over.
Corn special, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
See, he's coming.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Glad to recognize you. Glad to recognize you.
Thank you.
Glad to recognize you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. 48. Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much.
He did. He was like,
You should turn to your brother. Yeah, he's all right. You get over it? You get your pen? Yeah, I got one. Oh, yeah. All right, well, thank you.
I don't want you walking on it.
Say thank you.
Just shake his hand.
We were around that time.
Here you go, stand, turn around. Stand, your wife. Stand. I got it. Stand. Thank you. All right. Stand. Good. Stand. You gotta go shake his hand. I'm sorry, what's that? You gotta shake his hand.
Oh, thank you. Great job. Great job. Okay.
Here, I'll take it.
General,
Great job. Thank you.
General, Charlie cut a second 60 first ID.
Yeah, I know that.
For some reason, I was able to attract some of the best and brightest patriots, both in the public and private sector, to quit what they were doing in the private sector to come and help me build the department. But it's so much more than that. We'll talk to you just briefly because, excuse me, Pat, but they're never gonna, it's my one last, a chance for me to talk about my friend. First of all, he's one of us. He was an officer, but he started as a private and ended up as Lieutenant General in the United States Army after 35 years of serving his country. By the way, I had 2 tours in Vietnam. In his leadership, extended across the range, started squad leader, platoon leader, company leader, battalion, brigade, he'd done it all. And if you had a chance to take a look at his bio, you'd have to spend 15 or 20 minutes reading. So let me just tell you, when my friend decides to get in his dress blues and puts on a chest full of honor in the station, that chest full of honor in the station has quite a few emblems of that service. You can start with an air medal. You can throw in the Purple Heart from Mekong Delta. You get 5 bronze stars, 3 for valor, 2 for meritorious service. And you might as well throw in a silver star. And then you can read the rest of it. This is a man who served his country in a variety of different ways. He ended up as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And those responsibilities, obviously, got to breach the SecDef, you brief the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And so my little shop, we needed somebody, we were a consumer of intelligence, we didn't generate it, but I needed somebody at my side who was really became a friend at the time, who was a trusted advisor. But you also don't know that in his tour of 35 years, his service to our country took him to 127 other countries. Think about that. I don't know how many times he and his dear wife moved. Oh, by the way, his linguistic abilities were both in Korean and in Vietnamese. And oh, by the way, if you can brief the SecDef and you can brief the Joint Chiefs, I guess you could teach the Secretary of Homeland Security a thing or two. Let me tell you one quick anecdote, if I might, because I know Pat doesn't like people talking about who he is, but obviously he's a tremendous leader and a patriot, and I think all of us, we were served with a lot of good men, a lot of good officers, and I was privileged to serve with him in Homeland Security. I guess I'd have been more privileged if I'd have been one of his NCOs, because I know the kind of leader he is. But let me tell you one anecdote that speaks to the respect that his peers in the intelligence community had for him. My calendar said, because of some noise in the system and some intelligence that, well, some information that may have been relevant intelligence, I was going to brief the president in 3 or 4 days. Now, you got this whole complex of the intelligence community. It's big. Thousands of people, billions of dollars, they're gathering it, they're synthesizing it. They're going to give it to me, and I'm going to go in and, along with the CIA and a few others, brief the President of the United States. And so the general commanded, he said to me, you know, I think this preliminary assessment of the intelligence is a little bit too hot. It's a little bit over the top. From my experience, and I've been around a while, I think we got to dial it down. Right now, there are too many people that seem like they got their hair on fire. And I just want to make sure that you, the secretary, are positioned to give the president the kind of briefing that I think you want to give and he deserves to hear. So I said to Pat, I said, what do you think we need to do about it? Pat said, well, I think I got one alternative. Remember, he's only got 4 or 5 people working for him all the time, but he's doing it 24/7. Looking at it all the time. I'm not sure he slept. He said, well, I'll go back to my friends at the CIA and see if we can kind of pull this thing together. And you know the term competitive intelligence. We looked at it one way, and the whole CIA looked at it the other way. And you know whose version I briefed? The Pat Hughes version. Because his credibility with those organizations spoke to his 35 years of service, his experience. That's the kind of man that gave you your medal. That's why it was very important for Pat to hand those to you. I said before, he's my friend, he's a patriot, he's a hell of a man, he's got a lovely family, but when the call went out, he left a 9 to 5 and a little consulting practice and said, hey, we're back at war. I've been doing it for 35 years for my country, and I think I'm grateful, and I think the country needs to be grateful that he came back in and gave a couple more. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you. He likes to be called with Pat. Every once in a while I like to say, General Pat Hughes. General.
Applauded for something that any one of you would do. So, but I thank you for that. I would like to say, and I don't want this to turn into a mutual love between Tom Red and I, although I do. But there are hundreds, perhaps more, maybe even thousands, but hundreds of us who work for him, who wish he were still in the government. And personally, I think he should have been the president, but that's water under the bridge. I'll tell you, that's a pretty good story for a graduate of NCOC to have been the governor of Pennsylvania, congressman, secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and generally admired and respected man, citizen, politician, and former warrior. Thank you, Tom. So I'll speak for a couple hours, maybe a little less. I think it's important when you get a chance to hear from a guy like me that I do take a little time to talk to you. I'd like to touch on the past a little bit, maybe tell you a story you might find mildly interesting, and then touch on the future a little bit, which is my stock in trade. I've been foretelling the future for many years, and I'm kind of a snake oil salesman in that regard, but so far I've been able to sell a reasonable product, so I'll do my best for you. I was in Vietnam an infantry second lieutenant for 5 months and 1 day, and at that time I had a graduate of this course as my platoon sergeant, a staff sergeant. I told some of the fellows today that I was speaking with, that when I came into the platoon, the lieutenant I replaced had been wounded, and I think he subsequently died. And the guy who was in charge was the platoon sergeant. And my first, I guess you call it an order, or my first decision was to leave the platoon sergeant in charge. A couple of reasons for that, but the main one was he knew what he was doing and I didn't. And turns out he knew what he was doing in a lot of ways and really helped me over some significant time in the field. I served in the 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry under Lieutenant Colonel David Hackworth, a name that may ring a bell with some of you. And one of his hallmarks was infantry lieutenants would come to meet him as they were coming into the unit. I did, along with 2 others. He asked us literally to join hands. By the way, I was at the field hospital at Dongtam where I believe he got his 7th Purple Heart, and he was sitting on a donut on a wheelchair at the time. He asked these 3 lieutenants, one of whom was me, to join hands, and he said, look at each other. 2 of you won't make it, 1 of you will, but not all together. But actually turned out to be a little wrong. All 3 of us made it, but 1 subsequently died of his wounds. Not directly, but indirectly. Long story. The other NCO was not in my platoon, but he was in the battalion talk, did a fantastic job of keeping the communication going with units that were in the field. And as you know, oftentimes an NCO who has been in the field, especially in the Vietnam environment, who's then pulled out after 4 or 5 months of line duty, can be a tremendous value added to field operations support from the talk or the logistics base or whatever. And I'm sure some of you in this room had that experience, and that's a terrific thing. The last guy that served with me was E6 also, or at least when I met him he was E6, and he was a military intelligence guy. I was an advisor, so his squad consisted of 1, that was me, and he really did a great job of helping me. We were in the Phoenix program, which has a bad attitude and a bad reputation with a lot of people. To be honest, it's greatly misunderstood, and it actually did what it was supposed to do. Even the North Vietnamese, in interviews after the war, when asked what was the thing that really caused you the most trouble, was it the bombing, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, was it the fighting and deliberate fighting in the South? And several of them said, no, the thing that caused us the most trouble was the damn Phoenix program, because it intercepted our money and it took away some of our political leadership that was hiding among the people in South Vietnam. So I look back on those 3 NCOs with great pride and great appreciation for what they did for me. By the way, that second tour I was a captain, so that E6 and he was leading the captain in his squad. I had a couple of people in here suggest that I might tell a story about how I became an intelligence officer. So this is a brief story about my initial motivation. I was an infantry 2nd lieutenant in Fire Support Base Danger, that was the name of it, near Kai Bay in the Mekong Delta. And the enlisted men had, when they came in from field patrol, had to live on the perimeter. It was a kind of a meager fire base just built by them, very little in the way of accommodation, no showers, nothing like that. It was pretty rough living. And the enlisted men, when they came off patrol or came out of the field, they had to do guard duty and other support functions around the base on the berm. So officers were treated very well. In my case, I had a 4-foot half culvert turned over, sandbagged a little bit around the sides. That was my hooch. I shared it with another lieutenant. My head was on one end and his head was on the other. And I was wet and dirty almost all the time. One day, I was actually walking around on the berm talking to the guys, and a helicopter came flying into our fire support base landing pad. We had one Jeep for the battalion commander, who was David Hackworth. That Jeep had been sent out to the landing pad. I was interested. I thought that meant some kind of real heavyweight, maybe a general or somebody from Saigon was finally coming to see what the heck we were doing and what was going on in our AO. So helicopter lands and the guy gets out, and I could just barely make out that he's not a general, he's young, and he's carrying a briefcase, and he's very clean. And he's dry. It irritated the hell out of me. So I watched this carefully. He got in the Jeep. Jeep comes back to the fire base, and as many of you know, the fire bases in the Mekong Delta were basically muddy hell. There was no dry spot, no possible place where you couldn't get away from the mud and the water, and some other things that grew in the water. So here comes this very clean lieutenant, a second lieutenant, just like me, and briefcase, nice BDUs, fatigues, and even his boots were shined. Got him a little dirty, and I'm sure that irritated him terribly. Battalion officers came out to meet this lieutenant. He opened up his briefcase and spread out some papers on the front of the Jeep. Battalion commander, battalion XO, company commanders, and the S3 were all standing around. Not me. I'm watching him from the berm, and he gave him a briefing. Pretty fast, not too long. Fixed up his papers, put them back in the briefcase, got back in the Jeep, and went back to the helicopter and flew away. And the last thing I remember thinking when he left was, boy, is that guy clean. So I asked the company commander that I was serving for, a guy named Captain David Clark at the time, who was that guy? I said, well, that's the intelligence officer that supports this battalion. He comes from Saigon, comes out with his briefcase, gives a briefing, and he leaves. Then we give orders to you lieutenants and the sergeants and the enlisted men, who then go out and get killed because of this really great intelligence. I said, boy, I'd like to be the intelligence officer. That is a true story, and from that time on, I decided I'd become an intelligence officer. I did, after serving in the 25th Division in Hawaii for a while. I branch transferred to military intelligence, went to school, 2 or 3 different places, including a short course here at Fort Benning, and then went back to Vietnam in the Phoenix program, where I got shot at more than I did in the infantry, at closer range. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.